Justin, what's going on in the markets?
Josh, who knows? Let's see. I think the Fed's got a meeting coming up this week or next. The rumor is, my suspicion is they will continue to raise rates. If they continue to raise rates, that's probably going to mean some downs or some eventual downs for the market. That's my guess on that front. You also,
Before you keep going, I have two opposing contradictions, and I have no clue what is going to prevail. If the Fed does exceed rate raises, that's going to put extreme upward pressure on the dollar, and that is going to put a lot of hurt, quite frankly, on the entire globe. So, I mean, I'm sure that they want to stop inflation, but at what cost? And I don't know if they're willing to crush the entire world and go into a global depression because the dollar gets too high in that circumstance. You could say that's what they want, absolutely. But I do know that from some insider information, during the last time the Fed was raising rates, Christina Lagarde from the ECB called up Jerome Powell and he said, "Hey, like you can't do 75 basis points." He's like, "I'm sorry, this isn't my call." The powers above him told him to do so. But I mean, it's still a massive thing to think about. Can the Fed raise rates not to stop U.S. inflation, but what's going to happen to the globe if they continue down this path?
yeah, and like there was a question that was asked on Pi Stream like last week, maybe the week before last. What's the impact on the international market? And I think really the thing it's back into is the big thing I think that's lurking underneath the water is when foreign companies have dollar or have debt that's denominated in dollars, it has to be serviced in dollars. The dollars are more expensive to get, even if the dollar amount doesn't change anymore, the local currency to get. I mean, this is Brent Johnson's dollar milkshake thesis playing out, or a large part of it. So I don't know what's going to happen on that front, but I do know that if the Fed continues to increase rates purportedly to tame inflation, or at least make it look like they're trying to tame inflation, here we are in the upcoming wake of or in the upcoming shadow of midterm elections, then the reverberations can be felt, from some, say multinational conglomerate, I don't know, in Indonesia or whatever, right? They doesn't necessarily want to do business with America, but they've borrowed in dollars because it was so much more advantageous from an interest rates perspective, but now they have to service in dollars. And so they kind of get back into this weird ass catch 22. Josh, if anything, I mean, maybe this is, where we'll go from here. It just shows the, not the failure, but how can I describe it? Like, Friedman and other people make the comment that when we solve one crisis, and the crisis must be solved, we sow the seeds for the next crisis 50 to 100 years or 50 to 80 years down. Excuse me 1 second, I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
Shit, I was not really listening to Justin there. Well, this is going to be really awkward. But yeah, basically, fuck, I was completely not listening. How's it going, guys? While Justin's leaving, hopefully he continues down his tangent because I was just completely zoned off as I'm having some real issues with my business right now that we'll talk about that in a little bit. So Justin, keep going with your rant.
Right. Yeah. So I fell down the chair. Yeah. So I guess kind of like when I think about it is that you have a tool, or you have the dollar as this unit of currency, and it's really being asked to do, I think, too many things. You could say this is, the Triffin's dilemma coming into play right here, but I think it just shows, how the world is primed, ready, and due for a change to go away from it. Now, hopefully, there's not a lot of blood, death, and destruction when we change over the world reserve currency. And I don't. Well, I've got my ideas of what I think it's going to be, but I do think it's going to be, backed by real stuff, not by the current situation. So anyways,
you were touching on midterm elections earlier, and I know a few people that are extremely high net worth who are getting out of the US right now, that they don't want to be here for midterm elections. I don't know why that is. They just see that they think shit's going to start hitting the fan. I will note that they are a lot older guys, and I thought it was interesting, to say the least, that they're getting out of Dodge, and they don't know what's going to happen, but they do think that something is going to happen.
Yeah, like I do think it's going to get a bit rough in the United States, but as bad as it gets here, I think it's going to get worse elsewhere. And like where you are in the United States, like if you're in California versus Texas, if you're in Arizona versus New York, Florida versus Illinois, I think that's going to be a huge problem. And even if you can't get out of, let's say California, half my family's from California, and like there's parts that not every part of California is like downtown San Francisco or Los Angeles. There's actually some pretty beautiful parts of the state with some
going down the same dollar. Justin, what's China's role in our stronger dollar? Do you think they have any responsibility for its strength?
That's a good question. I don't think China wants to be under the thumb of the dollar, but at the same time, I don't think China wants the renminbi to be the world reserve currency too. Now, I do think they want to be able to settle in their own currency, but I don't think they necessarily want that to be the reserve currency. And I think that's what you're going to see happen right here. Putin alluded to it. I don't know if you saw the video that Josh and I did. What was it, 2, 3 days ago, where basically Putin came out at the St. Petersburg Economics Forum and said, like, look, where it stands right now, the way the world's doing this stuff, like this concept of fake money is going away. Things have to be backed by something that's real. The implication there was commodities, but could just as easily be gold, silver, platinum, barrels of gas, or not barrels, whatever the unit of gas is, barrels of oil, etc. So I think in this regard, it's that same thing where all the countries, whether or not they like each other, whether or not they hate each other, whether or not they don't care about each other, everyone, I think, is kind of getting to what I would call this come to Jesus moment, where it's like, look, the current system we have right now isn't very good. And we really need a new system. But it's one of these weird things where everyone will want their own, or everyone will want, of course, look after their own interests, completely fair and completely understandable. But you need like a unification of countries that come together in order to figure out what the new system's going to be. But that unification also has to be, not decentralized, but it has to both be agreed on by everyone, or for the most part everyone, but also be unique enough or differentiated or different enough where each country can have their own objectives, achieved from it. Like China's a good example of this. Let's say China wants to keep a closed capital account. Okay, whatever system they go to, they need something where they can put up a walled garden, but with that walled garden, it can also easily interact with whatever the world system is that it goes to. Again, this is where I would say XRP comes into the picture, but it's a separate topic of conversation.
Yeah. And while everyone else is gone, I really don't want to be in this live stream right now, but I will talk about my personal problems because that's all that we do on this channel now. Anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, my head's just out of it because when you have an immediate problem at hand, if you're running a small business, you have to delegate 100% of your focus on solving that problem, or I mean, it's going to overtake your life. So right before we went live, a massive issue came up with the business that I'm running, and I have to solve it right now. And if I don't, I'm going to just stress out wildly. And that's why Sean's saying my ADD is raging, because no matter what these questions say, I will be half thinking about them and fully thinking about what needs to be done after this. So Justin's going to be taking over most of the questions, and he is losing a lot of weight because he's in the longest fast in human history right now. Justin, why don't you talk about that a little? I mean, literally, like you're approaching, like, you have to be fasting more than any human ever has.
Well, no. I mean, so what I'll do is I'll go on like in a period of fast. Actually, Josh, I'm about to do another one here because I'll be in Phoenix, ideally.
We'll both be in Phoenix. Maybe we'll do a live stream from Phoenix.
Yeah. So anyways, like, I pretty much once you get on a fast, like you just kind of keep rolling and going. Like I did have a little food recently, but like
what is quite odd is he booked reservations for different dinner spots every single night that will be in Phoenix, even though he's on a fast.
Well, the problem is when it comes to Phoenix, like you really have to find it. And like the example I kind of use in that regard is it's like a smoker. The smoker, I mean, if you're trying to quit smoking, you still might want to like go out and stand with your smoking buddies and maybe just chew gum or whatever. And like when it comes to fine dining, number one, I like the experience. And number two, I like seeing what's there. And then like if you just have like, an espresso or, water, that's fine for me. Like I get like 70% of, kind of the enjoyment from that. Plus, like I said, it's just fun to say that, you've been there. And there's actually some very decent places in Phoenix, but like, I'm telling you, trying to find reservations in Phoenix, like you wouldn't think it, but they book up quick. So
keep on going. What do you think is going to happen with the Fed raising rates? What do you think? 50, 75? Do you think they'll raise? What would be the market's perception if it's 50 or 75?
I think the market's expecting some bad news. The question is, how much bad news is the market expecting? And if the market or if more bad news comes in the markets, see, it's not so much, I guess, what it is. It's what is going to be the difference in expectations from what the market thinks to what the Fed actually announces. And if the Fed goes full bore and does a full point interest rate, well, that's going to be interesting in that regard. I do not think that the market is expecting that, but we can see what happens on that front. But I guess probably the big thing too is that seeing what's going to to happen abroad? Because I mean, America, again, with the elections, queuing up, we're so focused, and rightfully so, on what's going on with or what will be going on with the midterms. But when you look abroad, I mean, there's more to the world than just America. And American politics. Now, granted, American politics will touch and annoy the rest of the world, so it certainly has an outsized place in it. But it's interesting. So I think what you're going to see happening, if you want to look at it from like the good or the optimistic perspectives, the optimistic perspective, that would be along the lines of you're seeing a controlled demolition of the old system in a way where we can usher in the new system, but without a lot of death and destruction. So that would be a huge plus.
Well, what's your time horizon on that? Because I actually happen to agree with what Anthony says here. Is oh shit, wrong one. The world's reserve currency will be the dollar bill for the foreseeable future, in his opinion. I mean, what's your time horizon with you trying to shift in this monetary base?
Yeah, so Anthony, like I would agree with you on that, if for no other reason that you have the U.S. military standing behind the dollar, if for nothing else. But I think where I would slightly push back against that is the concept of there only being one reserve currency. See, I think that's the problem. Like, I think it makes sense, and even from the American perspective, to have multiple reserve currency or to have multiple venues that can function as reserve currencies. And that's, I think, what you're going to see change.
And what's your time horizon though? Like when will that change? Are you looking at 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years?
I don't know. I think the old system, as I said before, and I know this sounds cryptic, and it's a worthless answer, but I think it will be ultimately true. I think the old system will continue to persevere far longer than anyone thinks it can persevere. And when the shit finally does hit the fan, it'll collapse far quicker than anyone thinks it can collapse. Like that's my guess. What might kick it off? The one thing you keep hearing people talk about, from PiFi to Manarino to others, is a liquidity crisis. In other words, people aren't willing to buy at any price or unable to buy at any price. If something like that happens, then you might see things or you might see things freeze up and spasm, and then you get into a banking issue, you get into a broker, or you get into a security settlement issue, and you basically get into this thing where fear, I would say, starts permeating everywhere. And the only thing that stands up to fear, or historically, one of the best things we've ever stood up to fear is commodities, mainly gold, silver perhaps, but like gold, like nothing. It's like this metal golem that just sits there and resists everything. So
yeah, I will tell. Oh yeah, keep going, Justin.
Yeah, so I think you've seen a lot of that playing out. I think it's no accident that centrals have been acquiring gold. I mean, that's just, of course, my take. But then again, as a bit of a gold and silver bug myself, this is what I want to see. So, I mean, am I confirming my own biases, or am I actually like onto something I don't know? But,
I would let you know that I do have quite a few NASDAQ puts right now. So it seems like green skies for the rest of the week. And
thank you, Josh. We appreciate your sacrifice.
Sailing. It'll probably be up 12, 15% this week.
Yeah, well, I was trying to like look this up off to the side. I don't know; it's a little tricky to do, when you're live. But look for a guy named David Schwartz. If you want to look at, like Anthony, if you want to look at like the timing and how you might see the system evolve, Schwartz is Ripple's CTO, smart dude, and like find out one of his like. I mean, he looks like a gremlin, but whatever, That's besides the point. The key is that the dude is really smart, very articulate, knows his shit. And he made the comment that, like, look, when we're working with foreign central banks, we say, like, listen, this is him speaking on behalf of Ripple. We want there to be a completely open and completely transparent thing. Like, we definitely like the idea of having everything open. But you talk to a foreign central, again, like, say China, they bristle at the idea, like, oh, no, we don't want this at all. Because you get into the trilemma, or the economic trilemma problem. So Schwartz goes on to say, so the way you solve this is, okay, fine, here's what we'll do. We, Ripple, can build you, a private, white label solution with walls. But the walls we build will be very easy to take down. So this way you can put it up, you can get used to the technology, you can get used to the idea, and then you can slowly, assuming you feel like it, start taking them down. Anyways, I'll see if I can find the exact link, sometime between now and then. But that might be a very good... I found him to be very insightful as to providing a roadmap, at least from the digital side, of how a transition might occur that seems palpable to all players involved.
Citadel short and U.S. Treasury bonds. Your thoughts? I would disagree with that pretty wholeheartedly because Treasury bonds are the most liquid form of collateral used in the system, and collateral is almost more important than money in the banking system that we kind of lie in today. And so most of
Yeah.
these massive corporations, they also have a lot of obligations and actual requirements to hold a certain amount of treasuries on their balance sheet, especially these banks. Their balance sheets have to be constructed in such a way to where they're forced to have a lot of treasuries. So I don't think Citadel is short in treasuries, but that's just my take.
Yeah, and I guess, or I mean, like, if they were shorting treasuries, I mean,
I don't think that's a great
weird.
short. Yeah, like that's
Yeah.
I don't think so. Could be wrong. Yeah, when I quit smoking, I stood around all my friends while they still smoked just to challenge myself. It seemed to have worked as
Yeah.
I was still there for the social aspect. Justin does that with eating.
Yeah,
It's
well, no, I mean, like, there was another friend too. There was we went to what's a place. It was a Steak 48 here in Houston. Actually, they had a Wagyu tomahawk that I want to try out, but we'll give that a little bit of time. So
what I actually like is since I'll be in Phoenix, Justin will be fasting. I'll hop on a fast too, because why not? Maybe, probably not 3-4 days, especially if we go to some of these dinners. I might do like a 1 meal a day type of thing.
yeah,
'Cause I'm pretty low body fat right now anyway,
yeah.
and
Another
I
thing
don't
you
want to lose too much weight.
Yeah, another thing you can do too is that, like, if you're getting a little rough, you've got to manage your sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and like there's also like lines of defense you can go through, like bone broth is a good example of this. Like you can have like a thing of bone broth that will run you like 80 calories, but like if you're feeling rough, like that's a good thing to help ameliorate and kind of move you over. And also, we've got another friend. He's never been on the stream, but he's really into fitness and that kind of a thing, and so he made the comment. I took him up on this. Is that you really want to continue to lift, when you're on a fast? Not that you're going to put on muscle, but rather you're trying to stop, the muscle loss that you will inevitably have from that.
Yeah, so you're talking about cigars all nighter. I happen to enjoy a fine cigar once in a while. I mean, I definitely don't do it often, maybe a few times a year at the most. But I do like to have a casual cigar with some older blokes.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question, Anthony. Do you think a central bank digital currency could be forced through some type of catastrophic event? I personally don't see the masses, even the most fervent people on the left, accepting it 100%. So, if you're running the bad guys, you don't necessarily want to force something onto people. Rather, you want the people to cry out in agony for it. So, looking at what's happened in recent times, I think back to what happened in Greece, Cyprus, and Iceland when you had the banks failed. And you basically had to bail in. If you were to see some sort of, let's say, banking crisis, or if you see a crisis in the debt market that eventually cascades through whatever modus operandi into the banking system and the bank suddenly frees up, you might have people cry out saying, hey, listen, this is ridiculous. I've got, $100,000 in the bank, well under the 250,000 FDIC or the NCUA limits, what's going on here? And I don't think it's any accident that the Fed, just what was it, like 2 weeks ago, they just completed their pilot program. I mean, look, whenever the Fed comes out, whenever any government organization comes out and says, we're conducting a thing. No. They've already done the work. They already know what the answer is. They just have to give the public foreplay in order to kind of get them used to what's going to happen. So to your question, I don't necessarily think it's a matter of forcing it, or the way you force the public to accept it is you create the crisis. And when you create the crisis where the public says, oh, listen, I can no longer access my money. I don't like this. What's going on here? Then you can say, well, geez, God, my goodness, this is suck. But, it just so happens we've got this other solution over here. And if you want, we can just flip the switch and have it ready to go. But you tell us what you want us to do. I mean, that's how it'll be presented.
Yeah, I happen to be in complete agreement, and I think it would be quite easy for the masses because the masses aren't thinking in a Austrian economics type of way, or they don't care about freedom and liberty. That doesn't even cross their minds in their day to day. So if the government comes out and says, "Hey, all you need to do is download this app and we'll give you free money," who wouldn't take it? I mean, it's going to be a very slim pickings.
Exactly. Yeah, you create the problem behind the scenes, and then you offer your solution. What is it? The antithesis, there's it's the Hegelian dialectic is what I think it is. There's a fancy way of saying that.
We might be kind of lackluster on videos this next week too, because I'll be in Mexico for the next week, and then we'll be in Phoenix. What do you have going on this next week, Justin?
Not much. Like I said, I've got some or I need to clean my language. I've got some car garbage I need to do with some personal stuff. Nothing too big. But I've been driving out to Phoenix.
Hider, dead cat bounce this week? Absolutely. As I'm shit out of luck as I just picked up some puts, so you can almost guarantee it.
Yeah, but like if the Fed comes out and surprises the market with higher rates, or if it goes the opposite way, you might get the discount bounce. The other thing is
But, like I'll tell you what my plan is at least. I picked up a few, and they were pretty expensive, so I could see myself selling the news or basically selling it when we're at like peak fear before the announcement. Kind of like let's say the market starts to price in higher rate hikes. I might sell my puts off there and then just kind of look for a reposition if we do see like a few down days in a row. But I have absolutely no clue what's going to happen with the FOMC meeting.
yeah. And as far as hold on one second, let me get the question highlighted. Yeah, so this is something that's said, but like this is one of those things too, where like if shit really does hit the fan, the money's going to materialize, in the twinkling of an eye, or the new digital dollar will materialize in the twinkling of an eye. In fact, actually, if I wanted to roll out a digital dollar or a new system, I would want to make sure the insurance scheme was unfunded, because then you could basically say, well, look, FDIC is about to blow up too, and we really kind of need to transition to this new system. So
and with a central bank digital currency, I don't know if it's necessarily going to start with a direct account with the Fed. I think it could start with every bank having a direct account with the Fed and them acting as the intermediary between all transactions, kind of like a lot of these third-party clearinghouses do today. And if that's the case, and the Fed kind of backstops the loans for the banks can kind of facilitate their agenda of the exact same thing a central bank digital currency would, because there'd be no way they could go bust. So I mean, it could be much more indirect, where the public doesn't even know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and Josh, just to kind of give some context to that, what you're really saying is, this is something I said, 4 or 5 months ago. The Fed wants the ability to cross the chasm. The Fed wants the ability to put spendable units of currency directly into your account, my account, and the business accounts. The reason they want to do it is because they can put money directly in, they can take value directly out. Or let me rephrase that. They can exponentially increase their power by doing this, and they can essentially bribe people with their own value, which basically means stealing it and giving it back to them, and they give them back even less. So in this particular regard, Josh, the way I would say is, banks right now already have accounts with the Fed. That's an easy one to fix, but rather what it is that if banks have the ability to swap off assets, that is loans that the bank makes from their perspective, the Fed can put it onto its balance sheet, give them back, bank reserves or whatever the new unit of currency becomes, and bam, there you go. The Fed's basically using the banking system as a handmaiden to put spendable units of currency, the IOU tokens from a bank, into our accounts, and then taking the asset that's generated, so that's the liability of the money that we owe, or the asset that's owed to the bank, and sending it up to the Fed's balance sheet. It's like the PPP loan program, the PPP loans that came out.
Yeah, but if every single loan, it would be like Fed in stepping in as like a Fannie and Freddie. Right now, banks will loan to anyone that wants to buy a house because they can pass off that to Fannie and Freddie. If they could do the same thing with let's say a government agency that the Fed rolls out, it would make it very easy for the banks to facilitate any kind of agenda they want to facilitate, like loaning to the exact same type of draconian and weird things that the Fed or a central bank digital currency could do. Are you still bullish on MOAS, Justin?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. On MOAS, 100%. Now, that doesn't mean that it's imminent. That I don't know the answer to. But I do find it very interesting that, let me do the words carefully here. So let me just scroll back up one thing. I'll get to the MOAS thing in just a second. Bonnie, yeah, absolutely. You want to pay attention to that. I don't know if you listened to anything, or if you listened to Tor Says, but she did a really interesting show on 9/11, going into some of the stuff behind that, and the peculiarities that came from that. Josh, do you know that the debris for 9/11, it was quickly hushed? Or that is like the physical debris from the falling towers, or whatever, right? They really were able to get that cleaned up quick, and you know where they sent it to?
Where?
To process it, the majority of it.
Where was it?
China. I'm serious. What were they doing on guard? Who knows?
So go back to your MOAS.
Yeah, so as far as MOAS goes here, MOAS, I found it, I also have been keeping an eye on Revlon. I find it very interesting that Revlon closed at 666. If you want to go down the rabbit holes and that type of a thing, the way, the good guy, or the way the white hats and the black hats will talk to each other is they can't necessarily put out a press release and, communicate, but they still need to communicate. So they have to do it through like symbolism, numbers and stuff. So whenever you see numbers like 322 or 666 or 911 is another good example of that. That comes from Revelations. It's, Satan being cast out of heaven is the specific reference probably for that one. They're communicating, or there is an argument to be made that the people behind the people who are behind the people, et cetera, are communicating. And the fact that Revlon closed at 666, is pretty. I find that to be particularly interesting. Right now, see, I think what's going on is that everyone, or no, I should say everyone knows. The good guys and the bad guys, they both kind of know that, we have to go through, this transition. We talked earlier about going from, the current system to the new system. And there's probably a good path to walk on. There are probably good paths to walk on. There's probably bad paths to walk on. Just like Josh walked off that path. So long, Josh. Anyways, so I think as far as MOAS goes, in terms of this, yes, I'm incredibly bullish on that front, but I don't know what steps we have to go through between now and then. And also when MOAS actually happens, I think it's also going to be quite some time before it plays out. In other words, it might spike up and then it's frozen. That is, the stock's frozen. So people are like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What if I have calls? Are they going to be worth anything? I can't sell or whatever. And at the same time, you also see everything crashing too. Now, sooner or later, I don't know when this is going to play out or when this is going to reconcile, but I do note that it's very interesting that you have these meme stocks, these usual suspects, Revlon being the most notable one of recent memory, that are acting unusual. Like they don't seem, they follow the market, but they don't follow the market to the extent that you think they would follow the market too. And what's more, if you have, shadowy conspirators or whatever, which is a really bad thing for me to say because I'm basically creating this black box that I can use to justify a new viewpoint that I have, which isn't very fair for me to do. I think it's very interesting in that regard. So, very long-winded way of saying, yes, I'm still incredibly bullish on MOAS for no other reason that GameStop, it's very well named. The game's going to stop. And also, if you look at their logo, their logo looks. It took me a while to see it, but if you look at their logo, there's a pretty big fucking hint in their logo as well that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I don't fall on that same camp. I'm much more. Maybe, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Did you catch that they extended the Queen's mourning from 10 days to 17 days? So there's another one of those numbers you want to pay attention to. So
no, I did.
Yeah. 17 should send up flags. Yeah, Number of the Beast, Iron Maiden. Oh, Ista. So Bonnie, I actually don't have any particular thoughts one way or the other, but what I would say is that if an entity or a company or a country, whatever, can see something coming far enough in advance, you generally can prepare for it. And so like if it was just announced and then implemented within like 72 hours, okay, yeah, we might see the effects of it. But if it's, promulgated like a draft 3 years in advance and then like 2 years go by and then like, the final thing's adopted for like, implementation in the next 6 months, probably not, because there's just so much lead time for people to get positioned. So there would be an effect, but the effect would be realized over such a long period of time. It would seem negligible would be my guess.
Oh, shit.
Lynn Alden buying some ARK was a dream. I don't know on that front, but I do know that Lynn did an interview. One of the Bitcoin channels I like to follow is What Bitcoin did with Peter McCormick. And Lynn's been on a few times. He even had Snyder on maybe about a month and a half ago. So it's McCormick does a good job, I think, of doing interviews. He's very good at interviews, but very much one of the Bitcoin maxis. And of course, it's fine, to have your beliefs, but I'm not bullish on Bitcoin.
I don't know if she bought ARK or not. You want to end this, Justin? I have like my mind. I am not here right now.
Okay.
Like
well, I'll tell you.
So before we go, I'll kind of talk more about my issue because that's all people care about anyway. So basically, the business I have right now is extremely capital intensive. I mean, like any dollar that I get, I'm just dumping it right back in. And sometimes I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna dump more than I have in because it'll just recycle next month. And every additional person I hire has a pretty big impact. So I'm just like, all right, like let's just go balls to the wall. Let's just hire as many people as humanly possible. But that adds a lot of payroll and if funding dries up for any particular reason, like because any week you could just be like, holy shit, like what am I gonna do? So I mean, it's pretty fun. I enjoy it, and then usually it's pretty smooth sailing. It's gonna be very scalable once the ball starts to get rolling, because it's something that you're not going to see any results, and then you see all the results all at once, because you're going to be funneling every dollar you get back into the business until you just are making too much cash flow and you don't need to hire anyone else. So but a major issue came in with funding right now that I have to deal with immediately, or I'm going to be fucked this upcoming Friday when it's payroll day. So I have to find a way to get funding in that time. So no. Like let's see, Josh, any thoughts on shipping tankers, even the travel size? I really like DAC right now. That's by far my favorite shipping stock, but I'm not too in tune with the market right now.
Yeah.
No, I don't care. So yeah, basically it's a funding issue. We did a video on the business, I think, but basically it's just like a mass marketing agency, you could call it, but not really. I don't know. Justin, I gotta go. Do you want to talk for a little bit and give some closing statements?
Credit card for payroll.
Yeah, I actually don't have a credit card, but Justin just gave me one, and I don't know how it works yet. I don't know what the limit is. I don't even know how to pay it off.
It's already maxed out. It's maxed out.
He just got me this one, so I'm just gonna start paying everyone with this credit card from now on, and the bills just go away. It's a magical thing.
Yeah. No,
it's a minor issue that I just need to deal with quickly and swiftly, and then all my stress will alleviate, especially when I'll be sipping pina coladas on the beach next week.
Actually, you can, because in Cancun, like, it's just, well, I don't know what the drinking age is.
18, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Theoretically. Okay.
All right.
Well, guys.
Yeah.
Until next time.